available in more homes than the Pac-12 network, we are the podcast of champions.
Fight! They get it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. All the band is out on the field.
I'm David Woods from Bruin Report Online.
And here he goes, Miles Jack.
And I'm Ryan Abraham from USCFootball.com.
Liner going to try to sneak it ahead. Touchdown, SC.
We are the podcast of champions. Available in more. Welcome, everyone, back to the podcast of champions. I'm David Woods from Bruin Report Online, the UCLA site on the 24/7 Sports Network.
And I'm Ryan Abraham from USCFootball.com, the USC site on the 24/7 Sports Network. And together we make the podcast of champions, talking all things Pac-12 football. Give you a little curveball there, Dave. I just went different from what you're doing. Instead of mocking you, instead of blindly following you like Pied Piper, I just wanted to go something different because I'm excited because we got some spring football updates today. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Do we have media, like negotiation, media rights deals updates? Not really.
No.
Not much going on. But what's going on in spring football? We all care about that. No more basketball. That's over. That Olympic sport's done. Now we get to talk some more football, which we all love to do. At least I do. And we're going to do that today. We are coming at you live on our YouTube channel. We are very close to 1,000 YouTube subscribers, so we need to get you in there, smashing that like button, smash the subscribe, get that subscribe going in there. Put the little bell so you get a notification when we are going live. But it's the Podcast of Champions feed over on the YouTube. We appreciate that. But we're also across the podcasting platforms.
Across the universe.
Yeah. Wherever you can get a podcast, you can get the Podcast of Champions, the one true only source for Pac-12 football on the audio webs out
Your
there.
words right now are flowing out like endless rain inside a paper cup.
I love endless rain inside a paper cup.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. I love that. We got the comments going if you're following us along live on YouTube. And who was it? Someone was there early that was Kings fan was like, hey, man, there's 3 people like waiting 15 minutes before the show goes. That's what we love. We love that dedication. So thanks for doing that. I did broadcast. I told everyone this could be going on yesterday. So at least people had a little heads up. Our Thursday morning live show is back. I was like, Dave, do we want to do a show this week? He's like, hell yeah, let's do it. So we're doing it.
Ryan didn't want to. Full disclosure.
I'm the one that got like spring football updates from like across
Yeah,
the
but
network.
before that, you were like, we don't have to do a show this week.
Yeah, that's true. And it's like 9:15 in the morning.
It's 9:17.
9:17. Guys like Ernesto.
Truth in advertising.
First of all, great avatar. He's got the Ghostbusters avatar. Ernesto says, this is much better than working. Hell yeah, it is, Ernesto. Much better than working.
I mean, we're working, aren't we? Sort of.
We're working, yeah.
Technically.
We don't get paid for this.
Alex has a question if I've played the game Civilization.
Oh, let me see. Where's Alex? Here, I'll put that up there.
So, great question, Alex. I have played many of the Civilization games. One that I played as a youth was Civilization 2: Call to Power, which was I want to say an offshoot game. It was very bad in retrospect. You had things like triremes, which are old school rowing ships, going against like modern battleships. If things were developing at different rates, which was interesting and weird. The modern Civilization games I've dabbled. I'll say I've dabbled. But once you have older kids, it's kind of difficult. Now, what I'll say is I've gotten much more aggressive with the nerdy history games. I've explored the Paradox Games school, which is Europa Universalis, where you can play literally any country in the history of the world starting in like 1450.
Oh.
And I've dabbled in that sucker, and that one is insane. So if you want to play an insanely complicated, insanely in-depth civilization type game, go check out that sucker.
So wait, so you don't have time to go to Vegas for like Pac-12?
Well, so most of this was early childhood when you've got like a baby sitting there just kind of sleeping, but not really sleeping, and you're just like, you're awake in the zombie hours, and you're like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with my time. Well, I'll go find something stupid to do on my computer.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we wanted you to be able to interact with the show. So if you want to email us, you can do that, pac12podcast@gmail.com. You can also call or text us at 424-532-0678. Our serial caller, Perk, has a voicemail today. You can also tweet us at Pac12Podcast, and the website is pac12podcast.com. And you can go over Reddit. We're over there. And, of course, on the Apple Podcasting app. If you want to follow the Podcast of Champions and leave us a 5-star review, we would very much appreciate that. Do we have any new ones, David?
No, not a one. Not a one. You all are useless.
We've been getting new ones every week, so I'm kind of surprised. That
Trash listeners.
Maybe because San Diego State's out now.
Maybe it's just like we're getting like a lower subset of listener these days.
Yeah.
We need to start high-classing this show again.
More Shanes around?
Yes. Yeah, where's Shane? Where's Shane been?
Yeah, man. I guess it's hard to be that funny, so you can't just...
He's too busy building Lego stadiums.
That's true. We had some Lego news. I was told, so I have that old yellow castle, and someone that does we had some info from a guy that does like a Lego podcast, and he said that could be your retirement. It's worth a lot of money. So I'm like,
I bet.
Okay.
I bet.
I thought it was like my favorite toy growing up.
And R.I.P. Hythloday, absolutely.
Oh yeah, where's Hythloday been? I think he's.
He last sent us an email sometime in 2021. I think he's done with us.
Is that really that long ago?
Yeah, I mean, he toyed with us for a long time with like trying to get us to talk about actual football, and then I think he eventually realized we're just never going to do it.
Yeah.
And then moved on.
Nice.
Which, frankly, I respect. Unending respect.
True. Okay. We did mention, I just mentioned like San Diego State. So future Pac-12 member, San Diego State, which how could you say no now? I think Wilner wrote a good story about you would really have to mess this up if the presidents decide not to invite San Diego State, which kind of means they're probably not going to get invited. But yes, they make it to the finals. They get blown out by UConn. I think that's the only thing I predicted well in the March Madness is I had UConn going to the finals, but
they cut it to like 5 or 6.
It was like
late
6
in the game.
points, yeah. And I was like, "Oh, we could watch this." I was at sushi, watching on the TV, and it was like, "Nope, don't need to pay attention."
Yeah.
So, but is there any way that the presidents say, "No, we don't want San Diego State in there"?
I have a hard time seeing them saying no, but I don't know. Is the Big 12 going to try to poach San Diego State too?
I mean, I think that's a good point, right? Like that would be.
I mean, Big 12's gone kind of coast to coast, and they've shown less concern with who and when and where. I think getting an inroad to California would be attractive to them. San Diego State aligns with the Pac-12, but I don't know how poorly it aligns with the Big 12 either. Like, I mean, I think, if there's one region of California that kind of fits a little bit more in the Big 12, it's probably San Diego and, kind of culturally. So I don't know. Might make sense.
I mean, if you're Brett Yormark, I mean, they've tried to get over on George Kliavkoff and the Pac-12. That would be like basically the best option available for the Pac-12. If you're the Big 12 and you steal that best option away, I mean, that's pretty big. And I don't know if that would. I guess it depends on the presidents for the mountain schools and the desert schools.
I mean, how is this any different from going out and grabbing like South Florida for the Big 12? Right?
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's the same basic deal.
And this team was just in San Diego State's more attractive by making it to, I know basketball's not a big deal, but basketball's very good in the Big 12. You just added a team that was, 20 minutes away from a national championship. That's pretty good.
If you were identifying an ethos for what Big 12 is doing expansion-wise, it's looking for quality programs, not necessarily the media markets, but they're looking for, okay, how do we make this the best quality football and basketball we can without poaching SEC and Big Ten teams?
Yeah.
Because that's basically the overriding thing that they've been getting. I mean, BYU, South Florida, Cincinnati.
Yeah, they took the best available group of 5 schools, right?
Yeah. So, I think San Diego State is in that next tier in both sports. Like, Boise State has it in football, obviously, but San Diego State, you're getting top 20, top 25 level pretty consistently, football and basketball.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
I think we did the stat like a week or two ago. San Diego State, I think since 2010, has the highest combined winning percentage for football and basketball. I think this is something that I think would be a huge miss for the Pac-12 because they're going to go somewhere. And it's probably going to, if the Pac-12 doesn't take them, maybe San Diego State prefers the Pac-12. You want to be on the West Coast and all that. But if the Pac-12 is dragging its feet and not every president is on board, I mean, I could see the Big 12 swooping in, and that'd just be an unnecessary, self-damage, I guess, for the Pac-12, which we've seen the Conference of Champions do that before.
Yeah.
And I don't have an issue. They could come in by themselves, if SMU doesn't work right away. I just think this makes it even more of a no-brainer. But we don't know. I mean, they're still haven't heard anything on the media rights deal. Dennis Dodd did a story this past week about that. Essentially, the people that he talked to that had run, definitely they're in the television market, business for all this. I forget who they interviewed, but he was basically saying that he didn't see a way that the Pac-12 could get the kind of a similar revenue number, which I think a lot of people think the Pac-12 can get something similar to what the Big 12 is getting in the high 20s, low 30s, wherever, something like that. But they couldn't figure out a way that it would work where the majority of the content was on linear networks. So it would be at least 50% streaming, and that could be an issue for some campuses with the amount of exposure and stuff. The Big 12, I believe the number was a little over 70% on linear networks, so they'll have some ESPN Plus and things like that. But the Pac-12 could have a lot on Apple and or Amazon. That's an interesting report where it's just hey, when this comes out, hey, the number might be pretty good, but a lot of it's going to be on streaming, so the Big 12 will have something to crow about. Oh, we're better because we can be seen more or whatever. But I don't know if you feel like that's that big of an issue. But I kind of some of the reports you're I don't know if I buy this, but my guess is when this comes out, it's going to be more streaming than any of the other conferences right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think with all the reporting, everyone should remember who the writers are and how often they are writing from a certain angle. Not because, and I'm not impugning the integrity of any of the writers, but I think it informs you as a learned consumer of news who's saying what. Dennis Dodd has been consistently hammering a pro Big 12 drum from the beginning, like Big 12 acquiring the Arizonas, Colorado, and Utah. So things that he is writing about the media deal and its potential, just understand where his sourcing might be coming from. Now, he might be the arbiter of truth on this, and that ends up being where it is, or he might be, hearing stuff from people who have a little bit of an axe to grind for getting some of these schools to the Big 12, right? So keep that in mind with any kind of reporting about the media deal from that angle.
Yeah.
That being said, does that one pass your smell test? Kinda.
It kind of does.
Yeah. And my thing on it is I kind of buy the thing where if it's streaming, it's still going to be way better than the Pac-12 network's distribution. And the Pac-12 network didn't really have a great streaming option because you still had to be subscribed to the Pac-12 network through either your cable provider, who, unless you had Comcast or Cox or something, you weren't getting it, or Time Warner, Spectrum, or you had to have Sling or, I don't know, YouTube TV, something else. So anything that's Amazon or Apple or whatever is going to naturally have better distribution because anybody can get it.
Yeah.
Without too much encumbrance. I think Sling was what? To get both Pac-12 things, didn't you have to pay out like $40?
Yeah, I think so. Something like that.
So anyway, I don't have a problem with it from that angle, but I think you're still going to run into a lot of particularly old heads who are just going to say, no. There's no way we're going to do that where that many games are streaming only. So, yeah, I can see it being really unattractive and that being a deal breaker for some of the schools.
That could be part of the delay. You're trying to convince everybody. Because we've heard from Pac-12 presidents that were saying, hey, it's going to happen in a couple of weeks, the middle of March or whatever, and it's still not happening. there's no real deadline anymore. Like the big deal was the Big 12 jumping ahead of the Pac-12, and that sort of set the bar, a different bar. The bar had been what the Big 10 was getting, which is this huge number, and then the Big 12 comes in and takes what some perceived as less, but they locked up some of the the rights from Fox and ESPN, and it sort of left the Pac-12 in a bad spot. So there's no real hurry. I mean, you got like 15 months or whatever, but I mean, fans are antsy, and the longer you go, I mean, who knows if the four corner schools are getting antsy as well, and they want to take a look at what the Big 12 is putting out there, and maybe it gives the Big 12 time to put better offers out. I don't know. It's, we'll have to see, but I don't know if anyone knows. I don't think anybody knows when this is going to be resolved. And we keep talking about it, but there's really not much going on.
Well, there might be a lot going on, but we have, we're staring at the surface, and there's an iceberg underneath.
Yeah.
So who knows? But the thing about icebergs, they sink the ship.
They do.
They really do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think whenever this one comes, I'm. Where's Wilner on his? How many half points have been shaved off the line at this point? Because it was like a month ago when it was -6.5. I think now
for Pac-12 survival or something.
And I think he said every 2 weeks that it doesn't happen. It's
yeah.
So
he said that, but I haven't seen I don't think he's updated.
I think our update's got to be at like 4.5 points by now.
I would guess.
Yeah.
This is a much tighter game.
Yes.
Pac-12 survival, and people ask us like, "What are you guys going to do for the Podcast of Champions?" Like, well, hell, we don't know, and we got to find out what's going on with all this too. It's like, if the Pac-12's sitting pretty and they got this awesome media deal, everyone loves it. Like, oh yeah, we got to keep this going.
I think we just go lifestyle podcast. No more football.
Lifestyle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone can talk about, like, you can, sell like beach body workouts on your end. I can start pyramid schemes over here. It can be fun.
Yeah. That'd be good. I mean, we could do like talking about streaming. Like, I can't believe how many like shows that look like quality shows are in there. Like, I don't have HBO. Then my friend logs in on my TV to HBO. I'm like, wow, look at all this shit. Apple TV, I don't have that. And then my friend logs into my thing, and I'm like, holy cow, there's a lot of really good. I mean, there's no way you could keep up with all the good shows. Like, I think you should have to pick a couple.
I started watching Severance this week.
I've heard good things about that.
So yeah, and I think I'm literally a year late. But
yeah, like new episodes are coming out now. But
but just to give you a little insight into my life, I started watching the first episode 3 nights ago, and I finished it last night. It's an hour long.
So you're not going to be.
So
you're not binging this.
I'm trying. I mean, that's a binge for me. And it's very good. It's very good. If you haven't watched it, I can say based on an episode in 5 minutes, it's quite good. And I finally watched the last 5 minutes of Last of Us, which I was.
You were like saving?
No, I literally couldn't continue that episode about 2 or 3 times because it was so dreadful and boring.
Yeah.
And terrible. But I finally finished it, and
Okay.
it finished, dreadful and terrible and boring.
I started watching, what's it called? Shrinkage?
Okay.
That was pretty good.
Oh, that's great.
I've seen a few episodes. Harrison Ford's in it. Yeah.
Oh, Alex has a question. Have you been watching? You don't watch Succession because you don't have HBO.
I think I can now.
Okay, you should watch Succession.
Okay.
It's really good. I'm actually caught up on that one. I've watched the first 2 episodes, though not watching them Sunday nights, of course.
Okay.
It's really, really good. Some of the best writing.
Wait, that's the one you were talking about, right?
No.
What was the other one?
Severance.
Oh my God.
Severance is a show with Adam Scott and John Turturro.
Oh yeah. Succession's the one where like the billionaire guy that's like his kids are fighting over his fortune.
It's Brian Cox is the billionaire tycoon. It's very like high Shakespearean.
Okay.
It's very good. But the Severance is basically the premise is that you've got your work life and you've got your home life.
Okay.
And what if you severed your memories of each when you were at the other?
Oh.
But the implications of that are your home life's great, or maybe. But you can just pay attention to everything at home and your free time. But those work life people that you are, like they literally leave work and then they show up back at work and they have no memory of the intervening moment. So your life is just literally being in your office.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. So it's like you have two. It's like a separate person.
Yeah,
Like,
but
I'm your work
it's
person and you're-
you, but your brain is bifurcated basically.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. Wait, so is that new or that's the second season for that too?
It's the first season, but it's I think literally a year and a half old.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking about Secession. I'm sorry. Like
That's what this show should be, actually. It should just be me and you talking about shows that are between 1 and 2 years old that we are watching for the first time. I think people would really tune in.
So if the Pac-12 dies, that's what we'll do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was listening. I just found this out. Like, there's other shows that try to talk about Pac-12 stuff, which I didn't know this. And there's one that's called No Truck Stops. I don't know what the reference is. I'm not sure what that is.
Interesting. Never listened.
But they were talking about you on
Weird.
the show. Yes.
Weird.
There's a thing. What is it called? The Men of Westwood.
Huh.
Which is a
The Men of
collective.
Westwood?
I don't know how collectives work, but apparently there's a thing.
Yeah.
There's some barbs being thrown over at the Bro and the Tracys and the David
I wouldn't
Woods.
know. I've never listened.
Yeah. So I was like, wow, do we have like a feud going on?
Hard to say. Hard to say.
Dang.
Hard to know.
Yeah. But I don't know. We're going into weird territory with all this collective stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
USC's been a kind of a collective mess, but we're seeing who's emerging. Do you like that?
It's a collective mess of collectives.
Yes.
Yes.
They're trying. It sounds like Men of Westwood has some good backing there.
Yeah.
Basically, you need like some super rich donor to like care. You need a Phil Knight.
You've got to have some juice. Yeah, you got to have somebody who's down to get into it.
And you can get people to be more of the collective, but if you don't have like the whale, like I think you need a whale. I don't think USC has like a whale that I know of right now.
Well, you need to have a whale. You need to have people who are connected to the programs, because it's one thing to have a collective, but you got to have that collective targeting the guys who you want the money to go to.
Yeah.
Right. So there's got to be a strategic element where it's kind of there's some element where things are connected. But yeah, you need the money.
Yeah.
Got to have the money.
Money needs to be there. Any thoughts? Or like
I mean, I don't know the critique.
okay.
It's hard to speak to it when I don't know the critique exactly. What'd you say it was the no truck stops podcast?
No.
Okay.
It's not airport. Yeah, it's no truck stops. Yeah.
Interesting.
I like to fly. I'm not a driver.
Yeah. No,
much.
I don't like truck stops.
No.
Oh. Well, the critique that I don't know. There's many elements to it. First, are collectives icky? Absolutely. Would there be a better method of doing this where the schools are paying the players? For sure.
Yes.
And I think everyone's hope is that it gets to that point. Anyone claiming, however, that collectives are in any way non-preferred as a donation avenue than donating to the athletic fund for the university is not speaking from a place of equity. Because even if you say this collective is non-transparent, this collective, you don't know the names of the people, this is bad. There's no supervisory capacity. This is bad.
Okay.
If any of the money is finding its way into the hands of players, then it's preferred to giving to the athletic fund of the university. Because the athletic fund of the university, you know where that money goes? It goes to coach buyouts. It goes to building funds. It goes to academic support. But you know where it doesn't go?
The players.
Into the hands of the players.
But
So
you need like new fountains and stuff in the athletic buildings.
You're preaching to the choir. You need those Xboxes in every locker room.
Right.
You need those flat screen TVs in every single locker.
Why not?
But that's it's dumb. I mean, so first, speaking specifically about the Men of Westwood, I've put my name and reputation behind the idea that it's 100% going to the players.
Do you have a reputation?
Who knows? But here's the thing: I've committed to that idea. Like,
Okay.
So if it isn't true, you can blame me. That's part of the thing with backing things with your
I like
reputation
blaming
and
you for
word.
stuff, yeah.
Two, even if you didn't believe me, even if you thought I was lying, even if you thought I was full of shit, there's proof in the pudding that some of that money is going to the players. They are still endorsing the Men of Westwood. They are at these events sponsored by the Men of Westwood. So they are getting some money from the Men of Westwood. That is preferred. Even if you thought it was 10 cents on the dollar, it's still preferred.
Administrative costs.
It's still preferred as an avenue for your money.
You personally get 90% of the money going to when? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. No, I'm bathing in wealth. You can tell. But even if 10 cents on the dollar were going to the players, that is still preferred to giving to an athletic fund for a university. So, I don't know. Does that address all of the theoretical critiques from this so-called podcast? I
think so. Yeah.
Okay.
That's good. No, I wanted to let you speak on. I don't want your name besmirched out there. But yeah, we've got some comments about it and stuff too. But Matthew says, so this is about our show, like the new podcast of champions. Call your show Tape Delay, and the intro theme tune is just you two explaining that there used to be this thing called tape. You didn't use it to stick stuff together. People still use it like, hey, you're on air or tape. Like, we're not broadcasting over the air. We're not recording with tape. But
sorry, there is another critique that I did not address.
Okay.
The one about journalistic ethics. So this is one that I think is actually a useful topic. I discussed it on the broadcast last week, but just to kind of put it in a nutshell. First, this journalistic ethic idea that journalists are impartial is horseshit. It's absolute bullshit. And anyone with a brain who is invoking that as some sort of totem is being disingenuous, or they haven't thought about it. But every single person with how they approach life has bias, right? Ryan has bias. I have bias. The most important thing you can do if you are in a position of trust, if a position of reputation, position of all that kind of stuff, is to be honest. That does not mean that you are impartial. It means you're honest about your biases. I have biases when I approach the way I cover UCLA, when I approach anything with my job. But primarily with UCLA, I have two main things. One, I went to the school, and all things considered, personally, I would like the programs to do well. Two, financially, I would like the programs to do well. It's better for Bro.
Yeah.
We get subscribers. So that's the main thing with subscriptions, is they're driven mostly by team success. Recruiting success to an extent, but mostly team success. If the program does really well, subscriptions grow. So that informs my view of things, but it doesn't inform necessarily the way I would approach coverage. It doesn't behoove me to be a blind, like, oh yeah, everything's going great, because everyone out there who's following the team also knows how to analyze things and says things are not going great. This person is lying to me. I'm not going to subscribe.
Right.
So it's why I cover things like Chip Kelly's program and say, yeah, it's really shaky and it's kind of dog shit sometimes. And why I cover Mick Cronin's program and I say, hey, things are going pretty well, because importantly, Ryan,
they're going pretty well.
Things are going pretty well.
Yeah.
When Steve Alford was there, things were not going pretty well, and you didn't see me cheerleading for Steve Alford. This is called intellectual honesty. Basic thing about the job, basic thing. It's not something you got to be clapped on the back for, but it's just an important thing, and it's something that I have, kind of workshopped. It is the most important thing is not being unbiased. It's being honest about your biases. Then people can evaluate whether or not to trust you. With something like the Men of Westwood, that is coherent with Men of Westwood. It's not going to affect my ability to be honest about the programs, because it isn't supporting the programs, it's supporting the players.
Yeah.
And so with Men of Westwood is promoting that consistent with what I just told you, which is that I would generally like the programs to do well. Yes. But you'll notice I still don't think Chip Kelly's program is doing that great. I still think while there were some successes the last couple of years, he's probably not the right guy to lead them into the Big Ten. I'm able to say that even while supporting the Men of Westwood.
Yeah.
There's your coherence.
No, it makes sense. Sometimes you're a little overly biased, like you're biased against Rick Neuheisel and things like that.
Yeah, I know. And that's that's just me being a personal hater.
Yeah. But like, so someone, and and I think there was a lot of talk about like 24/7 Sports, and I don't like the term fan site, but I believe that there are some sites out there that are more fan site like. At least when I try to run USCFootball.com, that is certainly not my goal.
Well, we don't love the term.
Yeah,
I mean, I think
it's for fans, but it's not.
It's not a cheerleading site.
Yeah,
and that's the thing where I think it gets kind of twisted is because the thing is, I think the vast majority of publishers of sites, aside from the ones that were assigned by 247 Sports, are alumni of the school.
The early, Tracy started this early. I started it early. That's what people were running these sites.
Right. And you're probably more on the trying to present the traditional journalistic, what would be the word? Status. Like you're trying to embody that a little bit more. So you are not actually as upfront with, well, I am biased and like that sort of transparent part. And I think to your credit, I think you do present more or less just kind of balls and strikes. Here it is right down the middle. I do a lot more analysis as part of my job. And so if I'm doing a ton of analysis stuff, I need to be transparent about my biases.
Yeah.
Like it absolutely needs to be a part of it. And I think every opinion writer, I mean, pretending like you can be an opinion writer or an analyst and not acknowledge your biases is crazy. That's the most dishonest thing you can do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, it's not an SB Nation site. None of these things are. It's not like rah, here's, hey, you got to support the coach and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I think we both probably fall more on the cynical and skeptical side pretty much with every new hire and new coach at either of the institutions we cover.
Yeah. And like when I started it, I mean, I try to be honest about that too. There's going to be bias for sure. Like Dave said, like I want USCFootball.com to do well. I've got staff that it's my livelihood, the staff that have been working for me for years and years. And it does go along with how well USC is doing, but it's not always positive. Like sometimes recruiting's better when the team kind of, falters a little bit and you need to like boost it up. Or, I mean, the biggest money-making event that any of us can cover is a coaching search. And that usually doesn't happen when things are going well, unless a guy leaves or something. But most of the time it's you fire your coach and that rallies everybody. And for us, like, you could say that you'd be biased against the head coach because you'd rather see him fired because then you can make a bunch more money.
And yeah, if we're being fully transparent, that is like, I don't think it wouldn't be completely out of the question that like when things are going badly for a coach, we might be at the forefront of, call it a day. And
handing out the pitchforks and the.
Well, I mean, like for two reasons. One, it's better for our business. But it's the reason it's better for our business isn't so much just the coaching search. Though the coaching search itself does drive subscriptions. It's hope. Hope sells.
Yes.
And if something is moribund, like if it is dead in the water, like and UCLA has a lot of experience.
I mean, Clay Helton for like 7-8 years.
Absolutely dead in the water coaching tenures. That doesn't sell at all. And it's unenjoyable too. I mean, if you look at our traffic on our message boards at the end of a coaching tenure, it's dicey. But the thing is, and this is the kind of, it's an absurd claim, but the more I workshop it, the more it makes sense. The people who are maybe most invested in the success of the athletic programs from a like pure dollars and cents perspective, athletic director is getting his money no matter what. Coaches are getting their money no matter what. But you know who isn't? The site publishers for 247 Sports. We are not getting our money no matter what. We need those programs to do well. So as like a arbiter of like what is not necessarily what is best for the programs, but who is maybe the most invested in what is best for the programs and who is maybe most invested in the success of those programs. I mean, unfortunately for USC, it's Ryan Abraham, and for UCLA, it is Tracy Pearson.
And it's funny, like people, the one criticism, and I always try to be upfront with people, and I'm trying to be objective. If I think they're going to win the national championship, I'll tell you. If I think they're going to go 4-8, I'll tell you. I mean, I'm not trying to like, get clicks or whatever and like say something controversial. I'm just really going to tell you what I think. Like I go to practice,
right.
I watch. are like, hey, I kind of believe what they're saying, that the defense is going to get better. A lot of people say, fire Alex Grinch. And I'm like, I don't know, talking to players and coaches, they seem pretty optimistic. So I'll say, I think the defense is going to be better this year. And if it's not, then I'm like, yeah, I was wrong. I'm not saying it because I'm trying to like pump things up. But I feel like you get this perception out there that people say this, that, well, you're not being critical because you're going to lose access. And it's like, I can't tell you how many times I've been in somebody's office at USC getting yelled at or whatever.
Yeah.
And people, they don't like what we say all the freaking time, but I'm going to keep saying it. There could be things going swimmingly and you say something great. We've had players that would block us and are like, I don't ever say anything negative about that player. They just don't want to be talked about.
In the middle of the Jim Mora era, when things were going extremely well, two different stories. One, Jim Mora called the head of scout to complain about us. And we were like basically friends with Jim Mora. And two, Demetrius Martin, after I wrote a unit by unit analysis where I like lightly critiqued his DBs, he screams at me from across the field in the middle of practice, something about, yeah, you think that's us, or do you think that's maybe the pass rush not getting home? Wow. From across the field. Yeah, I mean, if we were interested in like just, I don't know, the thing is, access journalism only goes as far as you need it to. And if you're a salaried guy, maybe it goes far enough. But if you're not, if you are tied, again, to the goodwill and faith of thousands of subscribers who, again, they're not dumb. You're not dumb, subscribers. Yeah. We love you. But they're not dumb. They can assess the wind. They understand the way things are blowing. If you're looking at them and saying, yeah, it's this pee on your face is actually rain, it's okay, then they're not going to trust you and they're not going to continue to subscribe. And that's just the nature of it. You have to have some honesty.
Yeah.
And
not everyone wants it too. Like, people get mad, like, hey, I don't like you're being critical, and they'll get mad at you. And that's okay. Like, if you want, there's going to be sites that are just going to say everything's great all the time. I just don't like to do it that way. I know David doesn't like to do it that way. And even go to like a player prospect page. Look at what it says. Like, it says who's they're being recruited by. It lists an assistant coach next to that name. Do you think we've got calls about, hey, I'm really the head guy? Like, you could say things that some coaches are like and other coaches. Well, if we were worried about, I can't say anything like this because we're never going to get access again, you would never say anything, because you could say the most glowing thing and someone's going to get mad at you. It's just, we'd say, this is a 5-star recruit that's going to USC, and some coach is mad because you listed the other assistant coach first instead of him. And, there's no keeping everyone happy.
Anyway, this is boring.
That was a lot of stuff.
No one's enjoying this.
Sorry. You know what you can enjoy? We got to do some, it's not really, well, I guess it could be a
Pac-12 Roundup.
Yep.
Pac-12 Roundup. We got some updates. I think I reached out to everyone. If I didn't, I apologize. But I tried to reach out to all the Pac-12 sites. I'm just going to go through sort of in the order that I got them. Our buddy Eric Cartman actually left a voicemail, so...
Arizona State Sun Devils.
I will play this from him.
Chris Cartman out here with Sun Devil Sports, covering Arizona State spring football. We've seen a lot of the King Gillingham's first year installing schemes, maybe getting about 2 hours every day, 10 practices in. Looks like the offense has actually got quite impressive skill players. Everybody knows about Elijah Badger, Jalen Conyers. The team added Xavier Guillory from Idaho State, who looks great at wide receiver. Melquan Stovall looks like a solid addition. Slot from Colorado State, and they have Geo Sanders. That's running backs that should allow them to be pretty good there. And quarterback play between Trenton Bourget and Drew Pine seems like a pretty legitimate battle with Jaden Rashada, a talented freshman, stepping in. If they can keep the quarterback upright, they have a chance to score quite a few points this year. And Brian Ward's defense is going to be very aggressive. They have some edge players that can rush the passer. DJ Green, Clayton Smith, a transfer from Oklahoma, Jaron Stansbury, and then defensive backfield is kind of where their strength is. including Davion Alford, the transfer from USC, has looked good along with Shamari Simmons. So a lot of new faces, but I think ASU has a legitimate chance to exceed expectations this year.
Good stuff from Chris.
I picked up most of that.
It was a little hard to understand. It was a little muffled, so I apologize for the audio there. It's one of those programs. There's excitement for Kenny Dillingham.
Yeah.
There's a lot of new faces. Should be a lot of fun. And I think Chris Cartman's very good at. I like to ask him, hey, what do you think the season's going to be like? And there was remember a few seasons ago where everyone thought Arizona State was going to be down, and it was like Jaden Daniels, and he was just like, hey, they got some good receivers. They're going to actually be pretty good on offense. And I was like, all right. So I kind of adjusted my season projections, and he was dead on. So I like what I like what Cartman does, because he kind of gives you a real thing. And you could see he's excited about the way this is going. And, for him too, like getting a new coach, getting some new blood in there, like Herm Edwards wasn't helping him. And I don't think he was overly critical or overly positive about it, but you could just kind of tell. I'm reading from him, there's just more excitement, Dave, about ASU, which is a good thing.
Yeah, no, and Cartman does a great job. And, not to continue to just absolutely shove our own heads up our own assholes, but he does exactly what I'm saying, which is he calls it like it is. And so when things were going badly with Herm Edwards, it was things are going really badly with Herm Edwards, and this should be over. Critical when you need to be critical, and positive when things are positive. And I think if you've seen even scrolling Twitter, and I see like things that he retweets of just like the videos from practice, you can just tell the energy, like the amount of fun in that program. Like, and I know ASU fans are going to hate this, but like it looks a lot like the stuff we were seeing from Jed Fish in that first offseason. And I won't say like Jed Fish is like a roaring success at Arizona. Obviously they still haven't, kind of broken through, but same sort of energy and excitement. I think it's going to pay off in recruiting. I think it's going to pay off in a lot of different ways, but also just, it should be fun, and guys should feel like it's fun. And it seems like the players on the team are feeling like it's fun.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of good there. And I think, an honest reporter calls it good when it looks like it's good, and calls it bad when it looks like it's bad. And Cartman definitely passes that test.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to, we've got
Washington State Cougars.
Or do you want to, here, we'll do the growl.
Washington State Cougars.
Wow.
That sounds kind of cool. So we got Jamie, who does a good job covering Washington State up there at Coug Fan. So he said, spring ball for Washington State is in its 8th day, and the defense is definitely ahead of the offense as expected. Washington State has a lot to replace defensively, but seems to have found some suitable replacements in Devin Richardson at linebacker, and Cam Lampkin, and Javon Robinson at corner. So he says, obviously the line is further along than it was at this time last year. The receiver play is also far superior, and Cam Ward looks more comfortable with this group than the last group. Ben Arbuckle's creativity has played a role as well. Arbuckle, not Arbuckle. So a little bit of some optimism there. I think we were a little down on Cam Ward in year one. It sounds like maybe they wasn't super comfortable with the receivers, and he's going to be a little more comfortable with this group. But any thoughts on Washington State, Dave?
I mean, I hope Cam Ward works out. I'm pretty skeptical after that first season.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I guess you can blame receivers if you want to. Offensive line was probably a little bit more of an issue, but took a lot of bad sacks. Check down master. I don't know. I'm not sure if at this level he's going to be a high quality starter.
Yeah.
We'll see. He's got a year under his belt playing at this level, so we'll see if year 2 turns out better. But count me skeptical.
Okay. Let's go to our friends, one of our favorite teams up there, obviously.
Oregon State Beavers.
Because of Angie, of course. Angie Machado, she's the publisher and owner of BruinBlitz.com. She wrote me and said, Oregon State kicked off spring camp in early March. where they held 6 practices before breaking for finals and spring break. They returned to the practice field on Thursday, today, where most of the actual playbook will be installed. During the first 2 weeks, all eyes were on newcomer quarterbacks as Clemson's transferred DJ Ungalele and prep Aiden Childs, which I've heard some good things about him, both arrived on campus. Both showed extremely strong arm strength and the ability to make all the throws that OSU quarterbacks and OSU offensive coordinator Brian Lindgren is looking for in a quarterback. Incumbent Ben Gulbranson started the session as QB1, but it started splitting first-team reps with DJ, who's expected to earn the starting spot by the time fall camp rolls around. For Childs, I think it's going to be tough because he's a true freshman, but I've heard some good things about him. Anyway, she says, defensively, the Beavers are looking to replace 2 starting inside linebackers and 3 starting defensive backs. Safety Katan Oladapo, I think that's it. Is it Oladapo? Oladapo, I believe, is the lone returner in the Beavers secondary, but is surrounded by younger players who have seen substantial action in Jaden Robinson and Skylar Thomas. Inside linebacker is a bit more up in the air as the Beavers look to replace Amar Spates. He's transferred to LSU. Kyrie Fisher, he graduated, and Jack Costello also graduated. Easton Mascarenas is locked into the starting spot, but will John Miller or Makai Tung win the spot on the opposite side? So that's from Angie.
Angie's great. Yeah, I mean, DJ winning the starting spot seems like it's a foregone conclusion, and then Childs is set up to take over for him once he's done, which I think he's already played 3 years. DJ, is it 3 or 2? I think it's 3.
I think it was 3. He was Bryce Young class.
Yeah, so he has at most 2 more years because he can take the COVID year. But yeah, at most 2 more years. So Childs will be there to take over potentially if he doesn't decide to transfer out. So I think that's a good situation. Yeah, I mean, a lot of defensive losses. We'll see if they can kind of rebuild from that and rebound. But I mean, at this point, can you really doubt our man John Smith's program?
No, man. Without a quarterback, they still just run the football through you.
Yeah, dude.
So if you're going to get a quarterback, who knows? But it sounds like there's some better options at least.
Yeah, for sure.
And with DJ.
Yeah, 2 better than Ben Gulbranson, who did, yeoman's work last year, but he'll be 3rd string at best this year.
Let's go to NorCal. Start with
California Golden Bears.
So our buddy Jackson Moore, he covers Fresno State, but also Cal and Stanford, so he gave us some updates for both programs. He says Cal has overhauled its offensive personnel and revamped its scheme. Why would you do that? They were just going so well on offense. I'm just kidding, of course. It has been a total 180 from former quarterback Jack Plummer and offensive coordinator Bill Musgrave to new quarterback Sam Jackson and offensive coordinator Jake Spivatal. Jackson is a dynamic athlete and brings a fast running element, but has also been turnover prone in spring camp. On the defensive side of the ball, it's business as usual for head coach Justin Wilcox and defensive coordinator Peter Sermon. The Golden Bears have added 4 transfers and a JC addition on defense this spring, who are all either stepping into first-team roles or competing for them. The Golden Bears just returned from spring break on Wednesday for the second half of fall camp. Obviously, the offense got to get better, right? Because it was poo-poo.
I don't want to talk too much about Cal because if I do, I'll never stop. But that whole program needs to get a whole lot better. Athletics, like the entire thing.
What's your faith in Justin Wilcox being able to do that?
No,
Nah,
dude.
No.
He's had such bad instincts with his coordinator hires.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's got it. I don't know if he's got the juice. And it might be. I don't want to throw out. not to sound like a Justin Wilcox cheerleader, but I don't want to throw out Wilcox as a head coach because I'm beginning to think that Cal situation is particularly horrible.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's going to get it done there. I don't know if he has it. I think if you're going to get it done at a place with no resources that doesn't have any interest or anything like that, you need to be like a crazy innovator.
There's exciting.
There's no other way to do it. You've got to have a game change in offense or something. And he's just he's a standard defensive guy. I'm going to run my defense, and it's going to be a good scheme, and we're going to play solid, sound football. And yeah, you're going to lose like 8 games a year, buddy.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That the way the situation is, like he could have been if he was the Indiana head coach or something.
Yeah,
it might be fine. I don't know if that's going to work at Cal. Like, do you need like a Kenny Dillingham or
you need to have
Jed Fish or somebody?
You got to have somebody who
excited.
is like going to pull everything up by their bootstraps by himself, and that's not Justin Wilcox.
Yeah.
So he might have been fine hired at Washington or fine hired at Oregon or whatever, but I just don't think he's going to get it done there.
All right, let's go over across the bay. Maybe.
Stanford Cardinal.
This is very Stanford. The first.
It's still so good that it falls,
Yes.
like that the tree falls. That's Stanford football.
The first line is very Stanford. Stanford had 2 closed spring practices in early March for a recruiting weekend. Yeah, that was like a month ago. They just started up camp for real on Monday as the new academic quarter begins. It's a new coaching staff from top to bottom, and the focus is on picking up the pace from the David Shaw era to an up-tempo Troy Taylor style. Roster numbers are low. Very Stanford again. And the first team is hard to recognize. Nearly all of the Cardinals' 2022 starting wide receivers, offensive linemen, linebackers, and defensive backs have gone pro, transferred out as graduate, or have gone pro or transferred out at pro, or transferred out as graduates. Plus, star quarterback Tanner McKee, too. Junior Ari Patu and sophomore Ashton Daniels are splitting first-team quarterback reps. So super positive there. Everybody's gone, but we're running fast.
Everyone's gone. We're running fast. We've got like 32 scholarship players. Let's party.
I don't know, man. Like Troy Taylor, I think is going to bring some excitement. But holy cow, like it's just a lot of work. And
yeah, they're gonna go like 1-11 this year.
They probably will. I think we've seen so you get like a Lincoln Riley comes into USC. They were 4-8. He generates obvious excitement. He's got pedigree, and you can turn things around quick by just getting a whole bunch of people to transfer in the program. And that's not like Stanford's MO. Stanford's going to be if it's a turnaround, it's going to be like a multi-year kind of thing, unless they change the way they're like being able to bring people in. Modern college football, like you can turn things around faster, but you have to kind of do things that are a little bit different than what people have done before. And it seems like Cal and Stanford are 2 teams that are just kind of not doing things that different from what they've done before.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what Harbaugh did at Stanford that time, do you think Troy Taylor's going to do this? Because Harbaugh got them immediately to 4-8, and I think that was literally on the heels of Walt Harris going 1-11, and then 5-7, then 8-5. So, and that 8-5 Stanford team, if you remember, that was a pretty good damn team. They just lost some games, and then the big leap up in year 4. I mean, and that's probably the perfect turnaround for Stanford, and it still took the better part of 2 years for them to be good. But the thing is, they were immediately like not horrible. Suddenly, is Troy Taylor going to do that?
No.
Is he going to get them to not horrible this year? Because I think they're going to be terrible.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I haven't dove in enough, but my instincts say terrible.
Yeah. I don't like hearing numbers are down in spring ball because it's not like Stanford's a program that can just reload.
No.
So yeah, dicey times.
We got a couple more. Washington, our buddy Chris Fetters over there, Dogman. He says, coming off their best season in 6 years, Washington's spring football campaign has been met with more anticipation than most, especially with a legitimate Heisman candidate in Michael Penix Jr. It's interesting because there's a lot of returning quarterbacks. Some of and I know Dave never gets excited for spring football, but usually the excitement is about quarterback battles. And we've heard, Arizona State or Oregon State, things like that. But many of the Pac-12 teams have their guys coming back. So that sort of takes some of the excitement away for spring, even though David thinks there's none anyway. But Michael Penix Jr. coming back is a big part of that. He says the biggest piece of free camp news was that the Washington coaches decided to split up their practices around spring break. So they had 3 practices before the break and then came back at the end of March to do the final 12. So far through 7 practices, there have been a relatively equal split in terms of who has gotten the upper hand, but the media did get a chance to see some, quote, live scrimmaging. And it was during these periods where the offense showed up and flexed their muscles. On the portal news, the new Huskies are running back Daniel Nagata from Arizona State, running back Dylan Johnson from Mississippi State, tight end Josh Cuevas from Cal Poly, and edge rusher Zach Dufree from Sioux Falls, linebacker Raylan Goforth from USC, and cornerback Jabbar Muhammad from Oklahoma State. They've also added 10 high school and junior college players that have taken part in spring. So the roster looks a bit different than what it did when Washington played Texas in the Alamo Bowl. No injuries of note. The only player that seemed to get seriously hurt at the time was edge rusher Maurice Himes. It happened during the first practice of spring, but he's already come back and was practicing this week. There are other players that are keeping out of team sessions just to monitor them and keep their load lighter, or are wearing yellow non-contact jerseys, including defensive lineman Tuli, and I don't even know how to say this, Latu Gasanova, Fatu Tualete, Voy, there's so many Polynesian names, Tunafui, and DB Devon Banks.
Your biggest mistake, your biggest error was not forwarding some of these to me to read.
Oh, yeah, because I'll just read them all.
Yeah.
By the end, you get a little tired.
Yeah.
Especially when all of the Polynesian players at the very end of your second to last one.
Look, you got Penix. You got everything you need.
Oh, my God. I didn't do...
Washington Huskies.
Sorry, Washington fans.
You got Penix. You got everything you need.
Yes.
Yep.
I mean, you won 11 games.
Mm-hmm.
You lose some guys, but replace, upgrade the roster. Like, in general, I think the roster is upgraded from last year. You have a superstar quarterback. You have a really good coaching staff. You have good offensive scheme. I think things are going to be better.
Yeah. So many great pieces surrounding Penix.
Yeah. I love it.
We do.
We got one more. Well, then we can do USC and UCLA. But first, if that's a word.
Arizona Wildcats.
There we go. Our buddy Jason Shear over at Wildcat Authority. Arizona spring football comes to an end with its spring game on April 15th, and there's been a lot of positives. It's one of the few spring camps where there's clearly been more good than bad. The offense looks like it's not missing a beat from last season, despite losing Dorian Singer to USC. And that's because Kevin Green has stepped into the slot nicely, and Jacob Cowing has been moved to the outside. The rest of the offense is pretty much back from last season. Jordan Morgan is out with a torn ACL, so the offensive line has been moved around a bit in order to find the right combination. Should Morgan not be able to go for the season opener, it's still somewhat of a work in progress, but it hasn't looked bad at all. Defensively, there is a clear speed and athleticism upgrade. Justin Flo has come in and has been one of Arizona's best defenders. Washington transfer linebacker Daniel Himalelu has been solid as well. Cornerback Ephanasis Prysock looks to like a pro. And
Ephesians Prysock and Daniel Hamuli.
Yeah, maybe that's right. Okay. Sure. Ephesians, is that right?
Ephesians.
Aren't
you a Bible guy?
I mean, I was an altar boy back in the day, but that was a long time ago. And then junior cornerback Charles Yates Jr. looks like he's going to start. Defensive line has a lot of rotation right now. Arizona has retooled, and there's talent, but the coaching staff is still looking for somebody to step up and be that dominant type of player.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds all positive. Offensive line, obviously, maybe a little bit of a worry if Jordan Morgan's. He said it was an ACL?
It was ACL, yeah.
That's going to be tough to come back from.
Last season.
That's going to be tough to come back from. But if he's ready for the game, for opener, that'd be awesome. Jacob Cowing to the outside is interesting.
Yeah.
Always struck me as kind of a traditional slot, so putting him outside,
He had high production there, but...
Yeah, will he be able to generate big plays downfield the way Dorian Singer was? We'll see. But yeah, I mean the rest of that. I mean, I'm excited to see Justin Flo, to see how he can do in a new setting. He had some injury issues up at Oregon.
He didn't light the world on fire there. But...
Yeah, but maybe at Arizona he kind of finds his groove again and is back to being a 5-star talent, which is what he was out of high school. So reasons for optimism in Arizona.
Yeah, 100%. All right, well, why don't we do this one?
UCLA Bruins.
So UCLA is on to, it's actually in its second practice right now at UCLA. Mike Regalato's on the scene, not me. But I watched practice one. Big headline item is Dante Moore is on campus. There's the quarterback competition, which is going to be as Ryan was saying, it's the one thing that can make spring ball kind of fun. So UCLA is going to have a pretty fun spring ball. There are a lot of contenders. Ethan Garbers is the returning guy. He was the backup for Dorian Thompson-Robinson the last couple of years. Then there's Dante Moore, the true freshman 5-star. Then there's Kent State transfer quarterback Colin Schlee. Got to look at all of them. My general sense of the situation, probably non-controversial, but I think Dante Moore would have to do something to lose the job.
Okay.
Like, I think he would have to look bad to not win the job. Would be my general sense of the situation, knowing many factors involved. And he doesn't. He looks really good. Ball placement for a freshman quarterback in that first practice. I mean, again, caveats, it's one practice, one thing, but like throwing like just these beautiful balls downfield, fitting them in between defenders, but not in like I'm throwing darts all over the field, but I don't really know where it's going. It was like these like kind of moonshots downfield, but perfectly placed into the hands of a running receiver. Not thrown behind, not thrown ahead, just perfectly placed. That kind of accuracy from a freshman is pretty rare. That's one of the big ones. Running back competition too. There's Carson Steele coming in from Ball State. He's probably the favorite to win the starting running back job. But TJ Harden's he played quite a bit last year, looked pretty good as a freshman. He could also contend for the starting job. Anthony Adkins is an Army transfer. He's huge. He's like probably 6'2", 6'3", and like 245 pounds. Nice little change of pace. So there's going to be a few options there. The receiving core is probably on offense the most impressive part of the team. Getting J. Mike Sturdivant from Cal and then Kyle Ford from USC added to the group they already have. It's probably top to bottom, just eyeballing it, maybe the most talented receiving core I can remember at UCLA in the 15 years I've been paying enough attention to analyze a full receiving core. Lot of talent. And I know you were probably impressed with this for the many years he was at USC. But
I like Kyle a lot.
Those guns on Kyle Ford.
He's
damn, man.
He looks the part.
He's got some pythons.
He had a couple big games. I mean, he had a big game against UCLA, I think, right?
Yeah. No, and I think he's gonna. It's a change of scenery for him. I think he had a lot of. I mean, he had injuries galore at USC.
Multiple
a lot of tough times. I think having a nice little change of scenery where he can play in a different offense and in a different setting. I mean, I think he's gonna have a nice year.
If they didn't have such a deep receiving core, he would have probably had a huge year. But it was
the interesting thing is he's walking into a pretty deep receiving core too. It's not what USC was last year, but there's a lot of bodies. Like he might have trouble getting into the starting lineup, but he's going to play a lot, and I think he's going to be an asset. And then defensively, it's same issue. I mean, you just don't know what you're going to get until you see the defense on the field, because once again, it's going to be a new coordinator, Danton Lynn, and he's very new. I mean, he's a guy who hasn't been a coordinator before, hasn't called plays, which that's not necessarily a deal breaker, but it does make it so you don't really know what you're going to get until you see the product on the field in an actual competitive game. Talent-wise, we weren't super impressed with the linebackers last year. We'll see what they get. It wasn't really a ton of new talent there. It's going to be mostly the guys they rolled with last year, so that's where it's scheme dependent, right? Where if the scheme improves a lot, you can see players suddenly look a lot better, but if the scheme's no better, you're going to have the same warts. Defensive tackle depth will be an issue. And the secondary, they lost both starting safeties from last year, and cornerback was kind of an eyesore. So defense could still very much be a weakness, very much a work in progress, putting it lightly. And a lot will depend on whether Lynn can be an asset at coordinator.
All right. That's our UCLA update. Thank you for that one, David Woods. It was nice to not have to read one for a second. And then I'll do the last one.
USC Trojans.
So they're back. They had 3 practices, then they took a spring break, and I think they're about 11 in now. They have one later today, and then 3 next week. They haven't done a ton of they're supposed to do a live scrimmage this Saturday, and then their spring game will be April 15th, and that's open to fans and stuff, so people can go check it out at the Coliseum. We are getting very limited window, so I don't get to watch a lot of the position battle stuff. We can watch like some stretching and individual periods, and that's about it. But just the general feel is that guys do look bigger, stronger. Like it looks like a more, complete team. I think Lincoln Riley, one of his biggest takeaways was that there's a smaller gap between the perceived starters and who would be coming in off the bench, that there was more of a drop-off. And, basically later in the year when they did have some guys hurt, there just wasn't the depth and bodies to replace those guys. They've added a bunch more players for the transfer portal, some within the conference and from across the country. So they think that things are going to get better. Coaching staff's exactly the same. So guys like Alex Grinch and they're back coaching the defense. But there's a lot more optimism, like I mentioned before. There's just seems to be more optimism. When we talked to Lincoln Riley, he was like, "Hey man, we were working through stuff last year. There was just like a million problems. Like you're coming in and it's like, why is there no nutrition, or there's not enough offices for my guys?" He said, you had so many things to fix. You couldn't really focus on the whole team. He was focusing more on the offense. Now he's going to try to focus on all the aspects of it. But they did add a bunch of defensive players. The defensive line has to get better. But Keon Bars from Arizona, people like him. They like him a lot. So we'll see. He's been looking good apparently so far. And Anthony Lucas is a former 5-star, part of that. The best recruiting class ever for Texas A&M. He's an Arizona guy, so he's back on the West Coast. So there's a couple names that they like. They had a dude, Jamil Muhammad from Georgia State. You're like, what? But he's been like an edge rusher that I think has been doing really well. I like Christian Roland Wallace. We haven't seen much of him. He got banged up early, but he's the Arizona transfer at cornerback. And then Dorian Singer, who Jason Shear had mentioned. I expect him to be, one of the better guys on USC's receiver core, but they got a lot of depth. They love Zachariah Branch, the 5-star receiver from Bishop Gorman High School. Everyone's been talking and raving about him. Caleb Williams back, obviously, so you got that there. And they got 5-star Malachi Nelson coming in as well, who is a little bit banged up coming in with his off-throwing shoulder, but he's doing some reps there. So, but I think overall, just there's a lot of optimism.
So they're optimistic about having a, top 75 defense this year?
It could be better. They like Mason Cobb too, the Oklahoma State middle linebacker transfer in. So they bring a bunch of dudes. They should be better. If they're not, I'm saying they're going to be better on defense, and they were in the hundreds, right? So if you're a top 50 defense, you're probably not losing those last 2 games that they did last year.
If they're a top 50 defense, they're going to be a college football playoff team.
Can they get there? Right.
Can they get there? Because they're a long ways off from top 50. I think getting there without a coordinator change that's tough. That's tough to do.
They're making a bunch of, player improvements. You're right. And how much of it was scheme, and we'll find out because, Lincoln Riley doubled down on bringing everyone back. Part of it was just hey man, we were all new, and it's just now everyone's got a year in the system. Things are going to get better. So if you believe them, then, I kind of do, and things will be better. We'll see. I think that was about it. Was there someone else that I wanted to? Oh, the depth. I like the depth at running back. They got Austin Jones is coming back. That Stanford transfer. They bring in Marshawn Lloyd from South Carolina, and they got they're pretty thin at tight end right now, but they just got Deuce Robinson to sign. So the 5-star tight end from Arizona. Now he might still go play baseball, but he could probably be like a Drake London type for them, sort of going forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, so we don't have updates from Oregon. I think I reached out and they didn't hear back. Usually hear from, and so Colorado and Utah as well.
Wow.
That maybe go along with your reporting, right? that they're going to be leaving. So
Yeah,
why would they give the podcast of champions?
Adam's like, no, sorry, I can't divulge anything to non-league members.
To be fair, going to the Big 12. To be fair, like all this, I reached out yesterday, so it wasn't like I gave everyone a lot of heads up. But thank you to everyone that could respond, and I totally understand that they weren't able to respond that quickly. I know there's a lot of stuff going on. There's still a lot of excitement about Colorado. They sold out their spring game. My buddy.
Yeah.
From college, Sean, who I saw this past weekend, we graduated together. He has 2 kids at Colorado, and he waited a little too long. He's going out there for the spring game, and they sold out. He couldn't even get a ticket. So
he's going to go secondary market for his ticket to the spring game.
It's crazy. So yeah, that's a true story. So there's obviously some excitement there with Coach Prime. And that's the only spring game that's going to be on ESPN. I don't know when it is. I got to look to see. I think they just started recently, though.
There's a great picture on Colorado's site of Coach Prime's like awesome gray-white beard. I got to find it again.
Check it out.
It's really good.
Nice.
But anyway.
All right. Well, that's all I got. Anything else from you?
No, I got nothing. I'm juiced.
Okay. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back and do a few. We just have a few questions. We'll do that. Back in a minute. You could probably do the questions since I had to do all those previews.
Sure. Where are we starting?
I think we're John in Oakland, the public and private college athletic department financial date. I think.
Right. This is from John Oakland. Might be just John Oakland.
That's his name.
Actual public and private college athletic department financial date. Hi, Ryan and David. I don't know if you were aware that there's detailed current financial data on the athletic departments of both public and private colleges available on the U.S. Department of Education's Equity and Athletics website. There's a lot of data for each school broken down by teams and coaching staffs, revenue generated, and expenses, not just high-level examples like USC's data for reporting year July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. Total athletic department expenses, $187,650,353. UCLA's for the same time period, $131,106,913. San Diego's for the same year is $67,245,917. This database consists of athletic data that are submitted annually as required by the Equity and Athletics Disclosure Act via a web-based data collection by all coeducational post-secondary institutions that receive Title IV funding, i.e. those that participate in federal student aid programs and that have an intercollegiate athletics program. You can even generate reports that compare data between schools. It's worth you exploring when pondering the future of college sports and paying players. How many schools generate the revenue to do this, even if it's just football and basketball? Regards, John in Oakland. Very useful stuff. If you want to check it out, it is ope.ed.gov/athletics/#.
I'm pulling it up right now. Let's see. For like looking at Oregon. Is there a total somewhere? Total revenue by team. Man, this is like, there's a lot. It's not like
I don't think it's a fun website to explore. But
no, it was.
If you're into it, go to it.
Yeah, you can go check that out. So I like try to pull up Oregon's to see if they're whatever that number was. I can't really tell. Operating expenses, total expenses. Grand total expenses, they had $121 million. So is that the number he was using? Total expenses
for
USC and UCLA when he had the 187.
USC's was 187. Yeah, UCLA's was 131. Total athletic department expenses for July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022.
Okay. This was maybe I don't know. That's what whatever. But that's interesting to kind of see because even sometimes you don't get the private school numbers, right? So
I mean, I think I'll tell you what kind of anybody would tell you, which is first, can't compare a mid-major to high majors because San Diego State, once they are in, if they are in the Pac-12 budget, there will be increases in spending because they'll have to. But also, money in an athletic department goes to a lot of stupid stuff. Kind of going to the initial thing about how much of the money goes to the players, zero. It goes to a lot of stupid stuff instead. It goes to massively ballooning coaching salaries. It goes to facility upgrades that don't need to happen. It goes to a lot of stupid stuff. If they were legally forced to pay players, maybe it wouldn't work out for some of these schools. Maybe it would, but you can find the money if you're willing to actually take money away from the stupid things you're spending on.
Yeah. We got a voicemail. I'll play this one. And I think the last email we got is the Frank in Sacramento one, Title IX. But let me play this for you guys first.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Perk. I'd say this question is probably geared towards the podcast of champion spring football enthusiast David Woods. I was curious to get your guys' take on some of the developments that are coming out of UAB and kind of the state of Alabama, and kind of the rumors or desire from different fan bases to have UAB and Alabama or have UAB and Auburn actually play each other in a spring game as opposed to just a inter-squad scrimmage. I was wondering what your guys' thoughts are on something like that happening moving forward, where, let's say UCLA and San Diego State do a spring game. I know there's some scrimmages that go on like that in the preseason for basketball, and so I want to know if you guys thought that could easily translate with football, or if there's some major risk that people are overlooking. Thanks, guys.
I mean, the primary risk whenever you're adding extra football games is injury. And I think with the way a lot of programs manage spring football now, and even preseason camp, there's like very, very limited tackling, if any, because the last thing you want coming out of any of these things is an injury. Adding a competitive game or even a semi-competitive game where there's full tackling in that environment, I think most coaches would kind of balk at the idea because their coaches are pretty risk averse as a general rule. From a fan standpoint, it's much more interesting, but I will say this. This is maybe a personal thing, but I don't get excited about scrimmages either. Like the preseason scrimmage for basketball, I mean, so there's the secret scrimmage that all programs do, and then there's the actual like exhibitions. I can barely sit through those things. Like they're boring as hell. And so I don't know if there's that much draw. I mean, certainly more draw than a regular spring game where you're just playing an inter-squad scrimmage. But I don't know if it's significantly enough more to make it worth it for a lot of these programs to do it.
Yeah. I kind of like the idea. Back when we could cover the off-season workouts more, like the summer workouts, they used to do some like 7-on-7 stuff with like USC would play like some guys from El Camino College. And so it was a more competitive thing. Now there's no pads. It's just throwing, whatever. But you get a little bit of that competition going. I mean, if it was some controlled situation where you're not playing a full game, but there would be, a few live periods of, our offense versus your defense kind of thing, I think it'd be kind of fun. I think people would come, especially if like you're in a place like USC, UCLA, every other year, one's at the Coliseum, one's at the Rose Bowl, and maybe it's not even like your spring game, but it's like a practice that you get to kind of work together. I don't know. I think something like that would be fun. And it's, there's going to be that guy that blows out his knee and misses the season or something, which sucks. But I mean, that can happen in any practice anywhere. I think college football needs to do a better job of owning or taking more control of the offseason. Too much of the offseason stuff is just piled together. The NFL does it great. There's always something going on NFL-wise. It's free agency, it's combine, draft, whatever it is. And I feel like you could get a little bit more of that market in the spring if you had some competitive stuff like that. So I think it'd be kind of fun. But I agree with Dave. I don't think it's probably going to happen.
No, it's hard to imagine. But yeah, I mean, I've always thought that there could be a way. Programs themselves need to do a better job of pumping up the off-season aspects of the sport. I don't think that's an overarching thing. I think the programs. And this is where you run into it because there isn't an organizing body. But the way the NFL approaches the NFL draft and how that becomes just this ongoing topic for months and months and months, and it's part of the national zeitgeist. College football recruiting is so much more interesting than that. and transfer portal is so much more interesting than that, but there isn't enough transparency that it makes it you can follow it, but you have to subscribe to one of our sites to do it. And even then, you're getting, what we've heard from sources, what we can glean from talking to the recruits themselves and all that kind of stuff. But you're not getting this like wall-to-wall coverage of it that I think would really serve the sport generally.
Yeah.
Now, would it be exploitative of the players and all that kind of stuff? Probably. Like, would there be some gross aspects of it? Probably. But there's money to be squeezed there, which is why I'm kind of surprised it hasn't been done.
Yeah.
And the programs themselves would benefit from it because more interest in your program is better for your program. And I think turning all of the coaches into pure dictators where there's nobody overseeing them who has an ounce of power. Like, because anybody thinking athletic departments are actually ruling the roost for a lot of these football programs, they don't understand the game. It's the football coach has dictator powers up until the point when he's lost enough games where the athletic department can leverage boosters to buy him out.
Yeah.
But until that point, the football coach is his own boss, and they are secretive people, and they don't want to do things that are for the best interest of their program. And so, anyway, long story short, it would be very cool if the NCAA or the programs themselves got behind the idea of, making all of this offseason stuff actually interesting. Because right now, Ryan has to drum up interest in friggin' spring practices, which, but there's a lot of cool stuff. Like the transfer portal windows are cool. Like the fact there's going to be another one opening up in a week, like you could be making so much. And 247's doing a decent enough job trying to cover it at the national desk and all that kind of stuff. But it should be part of the actual organization's job to promote this stuff.
Yeah. The early signing period is a big negative as far as that stuff goes, because it's essentially like if the NFL did the draft in the week between the conference championship games and the Super Bowl. Everyone's practicing for their bowl games, and that's when the signing period is. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, it was good in February. It spreads it out. It's the season's long over, at least a month. And you get to do the signing day, and now having it in December when there's also this transfer portal window, which is huge. Oh, and by the way, you're getting ready for bowl games. Like, all that together is just dumb. So that's you put too much in one little window, and so you could spread it out more just by going back to the way it was.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, you want to read the
Frank
one?
It's just a short thing from Frank in Sacramento. Title IX discussion. You touched on this during your last podcast. What happens with Title IX when great athletes are college employees? It's not good for the non-revenue sports, as I noted in an earlier email, which was from August. Yeah. Do you want me to read the earlier email?
I don't know, but I mean, just in general, I think if you're going to separate out revenue sports and have them be, I think it just has to be completely separate. Like, it can't be part of Title IX. Like, you're just like, hey, we're paying these guys because they're making a lot of money.
Yeah.
I think you just have to remove that from the equation.
I don't know. I'm not an equity rights lawyer. I know that sometimes when you remove things, it's the general thing with like any national program. If you target it only to the ones who need it, then you remove the universality of the program, and then it's the rule at like the national social level is a program for poor people becomes a poor program, and so a program for the athletic teams that are poor, well, is it going to be effective because it doesn't have financials behind it? It doesn't have juice behind it.
Yeah.
That's where I don't know. You almost need football. You need it to be incorporated. You need the whole part of it, because if you're just kind of carve out essentially the two men's sports that matter, I mean, baseball doesn't matter, but like these two men's sports that matter, then you're not really getting at the heart of this whole thing. And you're just saying that the only thing that matters are dollars. And I think, we're going down that path, and it's a little bit gross, because there is like true amateur sports at the college level.
Yeah.
And then there's this other thing going on.
That's what I think you kind of need to, like, I feel like if you're going to say, well, they're all going to be lumped together, I mean, I think there's a real risk that you start losing. The point is you don't want to lose sports that don't make money, but it's really hard to say, well, they're on the same level as this mega sport that makes tons of money. And you're like, okay, well, then you're only get paid what your sport makes, and you lose a lot of money, so they're not going to get paid or going to drop the sport. Like, I don't want to. I want the sports to, whatever the best way to have those sports continue to thrive and have a great women's water polo team or volleyball team or all that stuff. But if you're going to like keep it on the same standard as college football, which is just this, monster, I don't know what you can do. So just by like kind of removing the monster.
I don't know if you still count the roster spots as like scholarships that need to balance. Like, because I think that's more my point, is that I think you still need to balance those roster spots, because otherwise you're getting rid of a lot of women's scholarships if you just completely excise them from the calculations.
Yeah. Okay. You don't want that either.
No, because I mean, like there have been a lot of like I know like women's rowing at UCLA got really big because this is a way we can balance football.
Yeah.
And it does give a lot of people opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have. So. I don't know. It's for a much smarter person to figure out, but I don't think it's as simple as just, pull it out and it's a whole different thing. I think you need to still balance the numbers to some extent. I just don't know what the complexion of that would look like and how it works with, because I know there's something with, you have to balance spending. And if there's spending from the athletic department to football, again,
that can't be balanced.
Well, it can't be balanced. And also, if you do make it balanced and they do cut sports, then that is obviously not the equitable solution, because I think there's a lot of men's and women's athletes who say, you're going to give me a scholarship to play golf? Awesome, I'm in.
Yeah.
And then there's, obviously with basketball and football, it's a little bit more impacted, but there's also certain schools where women's basketball is a revenue generating sport.
Yeah.
Or gymnastics is a revenue generating sport. Or baseball is a revenue generating sport. Or softball is a revenue generating sport. And in those ones, well, the athletes might have a little bit more leverage. So maybe it does need to be more individually mandated. But when you rely on, there's a lot of complexity to it, because when you rely on individuals to make good decisions for themselves, especially when they're young, they have a tendency to get exploited. So I don't know. There's a lot of tricky stuff to it.
Yeah.
It's a tough little nut.
It's not an easy nut to crack. Couple YouTube comments. Howell. With no Big Ten teams in the top 25 for baseball at the moment, do you think USC and UCLA can dominate Big Ten baseball? USC has actually been pretty good. They hired a new coach, and they've been like kind of tearing through the Pac-12, I think.
Have they been?
Yeah, they've like won every series, I think, unless they like lost a couple recently. But
UCLA is 17-8.
Nice.
I don't know, man. I don't know shit about baseball. I did cover it at UCLA though for a little bit.
There you go.
When I was a student.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, I think I would love to see. The more I think with David's talking about this, like maybe just football's in the Big Ten and the rest of the stuff you can play West Coast schools. Maybe it'll get that way at some point, that Olympic sports, non-revenue generating sports, kind of stay more regionally and they're not really as tied into the conferences. I don't know. I'm not sure what the solution is, but
UCLA was 17-3, but then went on a 5-game losing streak just now.
Oh,
yeah.
Do you see what USC is? I don't know.
I didn't look, but I can
look at Pac-12 standings for baseball and see where they are.
All right, Pac-12 baseball standings.
But yeah, I think that's something that there's probably some sports that the West Coast will probably dominate for USC and UCLA in the Big Ten.
USC is 17-10-1 overall, but 9-3 in conference.
Yeah, they've been really good once the conference stuff started. We got one last one from Hal. Is Pendergast still on staff? So he's talking about Clancy Pendergast. He was like an analyst for UCLA. Is he still there?
As far as I know, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing is going back to the Danton Lynn thing. He hasn't called plays, but you've got Ken Norton Jr. on staff.
Cool.
You've got Brian Norwood on staff. You've got Clancy Pendergast still in the analyst role. So there's no deficit of guys who have called plays, who have some DC experience. So the experience is there to leverage. I think a lot's going to come down to how much savvy, how much acumen Lynn has for designing a defense, creating game plans, all that kind of stuff.
All right. Well, we'll try next week maybe to get updates from Colorado, Oregon, and Utah that we didn't get to do this week. But hope you guys enjoyed little tidbits from the different Pac-12 programs. And that's going to do it for us. For David Woods, I am Ryan Abraham. Hope you guys enjoyed the show, and we will talk to you next time.
Goodbye.